When everyone had given up on this blind German shepherd after 6 long years in a shelter, his time was finally running out. The staff had already scheduled his euthanasia when something incredible happened that changed everything. This heart-wrenching story of perseverance against impossible odds will restore your faith in second chances. The remarkable twist that saved his life will leave you in tears. Valleyside Animal Shelter was a modest facility in a mid-sized Midwestern town, understaffed, underfunded, but operated by people who genuinely cared for animals. In the back corner kennel, as far from the public viewing area as possible, lived a dog the staff simply called Shadow. Shadow was an 8-year-old German shepherd who had arrived at the shelter as a young adult, brought in after being found wandering near a highway, disoriented and injured. His medical intake had revealed the worst. Both eyes damaged beyond repair from what appeared to be some kind of trauma or infection that had been left untreated. The injuries had healed, but Shadow's vision was permanently gone. For most dogs, even those with disabilities, shelter stays were temporary. Puppies found homes within days, friendly adults within weeks or months, but Shadow's combination of challenges, his size, age, breed, and blindness, had left him consistently overlooked. Month after month, year after year, he remained in the same concrete kennel while thousands of other animals came and went. Despite everything, Shadow had developed a quiet dignity that the shelter staff found remarkable. He had mapped his small world through smell and sound, learning to navigate his kennel without bumping into walls. He never lunged or barked when visitors passed by, perhaps because he had learned long ago that displaying such behaviors only startled the humans, who would then hurry away. "Morning, old friend," called Monica Reynolds, the shelter's longest-serving kennel technician, as she approached with breakfast. At 49, Monica had been at Valleyside almost as long as Shadow. "Got your favorite today?" Shadow's ears perked up at her familiar voice, his nose twitching at the scent of the food. He rose stiffly from his bed, his once black face now frosted with gray, and moved with careful precision toward Monica's voice. Unlike most of the staff, who simply placed food and left, Monica always took a moment with Shadow, kneeling by his kennel door and speaking softly while he ate. She'd been the one to teach him basic commands adapted for his blindness. Gentle touches paired with verbal cues that helped him navigate his limited world. "Director wants to talk about you today," she told him quietly, her voice betraying concern that Shadow seemed to sense, pausing in his eating to turn his face toward her. "Guess they need your space for incoming dogs from that puppy mill bust." The shelter had been operating beyond capacity for months. Every kennel was needed, especially for highly adoptable animals. Shadow's story had been featured on their social media several times over the years, but the public's interest never translated into adoption inquiries. He had become a shelter fixture, invisible to most visitors who passed his kennel, seeking more perfect companions. What Monica couldn't bring herself to tell Shadow was that the talk scheduled for that afternoon had only one likely outcome. After 6 years of failed adoption attempts and with resources stretched beyond breaking point, the shelter's director had reluctantly placed Shadow on the euthanasia list. "I'm not giving up on you," Monica whispered, her throat tight. "Not yet." As she walked away, Shadow returned to his food, unaware that his world was about to change forever, one way or another. Dr. James Chen, veterinarian and newly appointed director of Valleyside Animal Shelter, sat at his cluttered desk reviewing the euthanasia list for the coming week. 6 months into the job, these were still the decisions that kept him awake at night. His predecessor had warned him about compassion fatigue, but James hadn't fully understood the term until now. Are we really doing this? Monica stood in the doorway, arms crossed defensively over her faded shelter polo shirt. Shadow's not suffering. He's adjusted to his blindness completely. James sighed, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. "Monica, I know how attached you are to him, but we have to face reality. Shadow has been here for 6 years. We've featured him countless times and still no takers. The county inspector is coming next month, and we're already 23 kennels over capacity. So we're just going to kill him because he's inconvenient." Monica's voice cracked slightly. "That's not fair, and you know it," James replied, gesturing to the stack of intake forms on his desk. "We have 15 new dogs coming in tomorrow from that puppy mill case. Where exactly would you like me to put them?" The tension was interrupted by the shelter's receptionist, Kayla, appearing behind Monica. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here asking specifically about a long-term resident, a German Shepherd. Both Monica and James stared at her in disbelief. They're asking for a Shadow, Monica finally managed. Kayla nodded. Said they saw his profile on that special needs pets website where we listed him last year. I told them he's still here, and they seem really interested. Monica shot James a look that clearly said, "See?" before following Kayla toward the front desk. The visitor was not what either of them expected. Standing by the reception counter was a woman in her early 30s, dressed in cargo pants and a weather jacket, a service dog harness folded over one arm. Her name was Alexandra Torres, but she immediately asked them to call her Alex. I run a specialized training program for service dogs, she explained, handing Monica a business card for Second Sight Service Dogs. We work specifically with animals that might be overlooked by traditional programs. Monica studied the card skeptically. And you're interested in Shadow? You know he's completely blind, right? Both eyes. Alex smiled. That's exactly why I'm here. My program specializes in partnering blind dogs with blind people. The concept seems so counterintuitive that both shelter workers momentarily struggled to respond. I'm sorry, but how exactly does that work? James asked, having joined them at the front desk. It's actually quite remarkable, Alex explained. A blind person and a blind dog can form an exceptional team. The person provides directional guidance through the harness, while the dog provides obstacle detection through his other heightened senses. They compensate for each other's limitations. But more importantly, there's a unique bond that forms, a mutual understanding that creates extraordinary partnerships. She paused, noticing their still skeptical expressions. I know it sounds unusual, but we've successfully paired 8 teams so far. Our current waiting list has a gentleman who specifically requested an older German Shepherd if possible. He's a veteran who lost his sight in combat and has had German Shepherds all his life. Monica's expression softened slightly. Shadow's 8, maybe 9. He's been here 6 years. Perfect, Alex replied. Mature dogs tend to be more successful in our program, less excitable, more focused. May I meet him? As they walked toward Shadow's kennel, Monica found herself torn between hope and protective skepticism. Was this too good to be true, or was it Shadow's last best chance? Shadow sensed the approaching footsteps. 3 sets, 1 familiar. Monica, 2 unknown. His ears pivoted forward, head tilting slightly as he processed this unusual development. Visitors rarely came to his section of the shelter. This is Shadow, Monica said, her voice carrying that special tone she used when trying to present him favorably to potential adopters, something that hadn't happened in years. Shadow rose to his feet, oriented toward the voices, his posture alert but calm. He'd long ago learned that rushing to the kennel door only frightened visitors. He's gorgeous, came an unfamiliar female voice, warm, confident, and speaking at a normal volume, rather than the uncomfortable whispers most visitors used around him. Those ears are incredible, perfect radar dishes. Shadow heard the smile in Monica's reply. He can track a treat bag opening from the other end of the building. May I go in? Asked the stranger. Monica hesitated. He doesn't get many visitors. Let me come in with you first. The kennel door opened and Shadow smelled Monica's familiar scent as she entered and gently touched his shoulder. Their signal that something new was happening. Shadow. This is Alex. She's here to meet you. Shadow stood perfectly still as the new person entered. Her movements were deliberate, not cautious but respectful. She didn't immediately reach for him, another difference from most visitors who seemed compelled to quickly touch his head, often startling him. Hello, Shadow, the woman said. I'm going to approach from your right side. I have treats if Monica says they're allowed. He can have them, Monica confirmed. No allergies. Shadow detected the small sounds of a bag opening, then the distinctive aroma of high-quality training treats, not the standard shelter biscuits. His nose twitched with interest. Shadow treat, the stranger said, holding something near his nose so he could locate it precisely before taking it gently from her fingers. What happened next surprised even Monica. Instead of retreating after accepting the treat, as was his usual pattern with strangers, Shadow remained engaged, his nose working to catalog everything about this new person: the scent of other dogs on her clothes, the leather of the items she carried, the faint aroma of coffee. "You're a gentleman, aren't you?" Alex observed slowly, reaching to let him sniff her hand before touching the side of his neck. Her fingers found exactly the spot behind his ear that he preferred, something most people had to be shown. As Alex continued her quiet assessment, Monica and Dr. Chen watched in astonishment. Shadow was responding to this stranger with a level of trust he rarely showed anyone besides Monica. He even leaned slightly into Alex's touch when she ran her hands along his sides, checking his muscle condition. "He's underweight, but not severely," Alex noted professionally. "Decent muscle tone considering the confined environment." "How's his hearing?" "Perfect," Monica replied. "He recognizes different staff members just by their footsteps." Alex nodded approvingly. "That's excellent. What commands does he know?" For the next 15 minutes, Monica demonstrated the modified command system she developed with Shadow. Touch cues paired with verbal commands that helped him navigate without sight. Alex observed carefully, occasionally asking Shadow to repeat a behavior, which he did without hesitation. "He's incredible," Alex said finally, genuine admiration in her voice. "Most seeing dogs wouldn't be this responsive after years in a shelter environment. He's maintained his cognitive sharpness despite everything." She turned to Dr. Chen. "I'd like to have my program's veterinarian examine him, and if he clears their assessment, I want to enter him into our training program. We'd foster him initially during the 8-week evaluation period. If he's suitable for service work, we already have a potential handler waiting." Monica's voice betrayed her cautious hope, and if he's not suitable, Alex's answer was immediate and firm. "Then he'll stay with us in our sanctuary program. Either way, he'll never see the inside of a shelter again." For the first time in years, Shadow's future suddenly contained possibility rather than just existence. But could a blind dog really become someone's lifeline? And after 6 years of institutional living, could Shadow adapt to a world beyond his kennel walls? The following week brought changes that would have overwhelmed most dogs, but Shadow approached each new experience with a remarkable blend of caution and courage. After receiving medical clearance from both doctors, Chen and the service dog program's veterinarian, Shadow left Valleyside Animal Shelter for the first time in 6 years. Monica had tearfully helped load his few possessions: his bed, a worn plush toy, and his food bowls into Alex's SUV. "I'll come visit," she promised, placing a gentle kiss on his graying muzzle. Shadow leaned against her one last time, as if understanding that one chapter of his life was ending and another beginning. Second Sight service dogs operated from a converted farmhouse on 10 acres of land about an hour outside the city. Unlike traditional kennels, their facility was designed to feel more like a home, with comfortable rooms where dogs in training lived alongside staff members, rather than in cages or runs. "This will be your room," Alex explained as she guided Shadow through his new space, allowing him to explore at his own pace, his nose working overtime to catalog the unfamiliar environment. "You'll sleep here, but spend most days in the training rooms and yards." For the first few days, they simply let Shadow acclimate, establishing routines for meals, bathroom breaks, and short training sessions that built upon the foundation Monica had created. Staff members were carefully instructed on how to interact with him, always announcing their presence before approaching and using consistent commands and touch signals. By the end of the first week, Alex was convinced they'd made the right decision in selecting Shadow. "He's mapping the entire property," she explained to her colleague Marcus, a certified service dog trainer who specialized in working with their blind dogs. "Watch how he counts steps between landmarks and uses textural changes in the flooring to orient himself." Together they observed as Shadow navigated from his room down the hallway, 14 steps with a slight turn at 10, through the kitchen tile floor with distinct echo quality, and to the back door, identifiable by the rubber mat and slight draft. He moved with increasing confidence each day, his initial hesitancy replaced by methodical precision. "He's ready to start harness training," Marcus decided, "especially if we want him ready when Michael visits next month." Michael Davidson was the potential handler Alex had mentioned at the shelter, a 42-year-old veteran who had lost his sight 3 years earlier from an IED explosion during his final deployment. His adjustment to civilian life as a blind person had been challenging, complicated by PTSD that made navigating public spaces with a traditional cane particularly stressful. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Alex cautioned. "Shadow needs to prove he can handle public environments first. He hasn't been outside the shelter in years." The next phase of training would test whether Shadow could adapt to the sensory overload of the world beyond. Quiet farm and shelter walls. Could a dog who had spent most of his life in institutional confinement learn to navigate busy streets, stores, and the unpredictable environments his potential handler would need to access? 2 days later, Shadow faced his first major challenge, a trip to a local shopping center. Wearing a training vest that identified him as a service dog in training and carefully harnessed to Marcus, Shadow stepped into a world filled with overwhelming new sounds, smells, and textures. The automatic doors whooshed open, sending a blast of air-conditioned air scented with a dozen food court offerings, cleaning products, perfumes, and the presence of countless strangers. Shadow froze momentarily, his ears pivoting rapidly to process the cacophony of shopping center sounds. "Easy, Shadow," Marcus said quietly, giving the gentle lead cue they'd practiced. "Forward." What happened next would determine whether Shadow's remarkable journey would continue forward or end before it truly began. Shadow's initial hesitation lasted only moments before a remarkable transformation occurred. His posture shifted subtly, head higher, ears alert but not anxious, his focus narrowing to his handler and the task at hand. Step by careful step, he began moving forward alongside Marcus, navigating through the shopping center with increasing confidence. "Remarkable," whispered Dr. Lydia Patel, the program's behavioral specialist who was observing the session. "He's filtering the sensory input rather than becoming overwhelmed by it." Indeed, Shadow seemed to be processing his environment with an almost methodical precision. When a child darted across their path, he paused momentarily without showing fear. When a store alarm suddenly blared, his ears flattened briefly before he regained composure, looking to Marcus for reassurance rather than panicking. "Love, Shadow," Marcus directed, applying gentle pressure to the specialized harness. Shadow responded immediately, making a smooth turn that avoided a display stand by several inches without having seen it, his whiskers and the subtle air pressure changes around objects guiding him. For 2 hours, they methodically worked through increasingly challenging environments within the mall. The food court with its overwhelming scents and sounds, a department store with its maze of clothing racks, an elevator with its unsettling movement sensations. In each situation, Shadow demonstrated an extraordinary ability to adapt and problem solve. "He's not just following commands," Alex noted as they took a break on a bench. "He's actively making decisions and adjustments. Watch how he positions himself when we stop, always to the side where there's less foot traffic." When a group of teenagers approached, talking loudly and gesturing dramatically, Shadow calmly shifted his position slightly to block Marcus from their exuberant movements, a natural protective instinct that couldn't be trained. By the end of the session, the evaluation team was cautiously optimistic. Shadow had demonstrated not only the ability to handle public environments, but also a natural aptitude for service work. His blindness, rather than being a limitation, seemed to enhance his other senses in ways that made him uniquely suited to assist a visually impaired handler. "I think we can schedule Michael's introductory visit," Marcus suggested as they drove back to the training center. "Shadow's readiness is progressing faster than I expected." In the back seat, Shadow lay with his head resting on his paws, tired but content. The world beyond his kennel was complex and challenging, but he was proving equal to its demands with each passing day. 2 weeks later, after intensive daily training sessions that refined Shadow's skills and built his confidence in various environments, the moment of truth arrived. Michael Davidson's truck pulled into the training center's driveway, driven by his brother, who had accompanied him from their home 2 hours away. Michael emerged from the passenger side, a tall man with military posture despite the white cane he used to navigate. Burn scars were visible on the left side of his face around the special glasses that covered his sightless eyes. His movements were precise but cautious, a man who had learned to navigate a world he could no longer see, but still hadn't fully made peace with his new reality. Welcome to Second Sight, Alex greeted him, gently touching his elbow in the proper technique for guiding a blind person. We're excited to introduce you to Shadow today. Michael's expression remained guarded. I'll be honest, when you first called about a blind dog, I thought it was some kind of joke. Still not convinced this isn't a waste of everyone's time? Alex smiled, undeterred by his skepticism. That's fair. We don't expect you to believe it until you experience it. Let's head inside, and you can decide for yourself. As they walked toward the training room where Shadow and Marcus waited, Michael's brother hung back with one of the staff members. He needs this to work, he confided quietly. He's been shutting down more and more. Barely leaves the house anymore. The VA recommended your program as a last resort. The introduction that followed would either confirm Michael's doubts or open the door to a partnership that could transform both lives irrevocably. The training room was deliberately arranged with minimal distractions for this critical first meeting. Shadow sat calmly beside Marcus, already wearing the specialized harness designed for a blind dog, blind handler team. Though he couldn't see the newcomers entering the room, his ears pivoted forward at the sound of unfamiliar footsteps. Michael, I'd like you to meet Shadow, Alex said as they entered. He's an 8-year-old German Shepherd who has been with us for about a month. Michael stood just inside the doorway, his posture rigid with the weariness of someone who had learned to be suspicious of new situations. How does this work exactly? Let's start by just introducing you, Alex suggested. Marcus will bring Shadow to you, and you can get acquainted before we try any handling. Marcus gave Shadow the quiet command to move forward, guiding him toward Michael. Shadow, say hello. Shadow approached cautiously, his nose working to catalog everything about this new person, the subtle scent of medications, the leather of his boots, the lingering aroma of the truck they'd arrived in. He stopped precisely in front of Michael, not crowding, but close enough for contact. He's waiting for you to acknowledge him, Alex explained. You can put your hand out if you're comfortable. Michael hesitated, then extended his hand palm down at about the height of Shadow's head. The German Shepherd gently sniffed his fingers, then did something unexpected. He leaned his head forward until it touched Michael's hand, initiating contact on his own terms. The simple gesture seemed to catch Michael off guard. His stern expression softened slightly as he allowed his fingers to register the texture of Shadow's fur, the shape of his ears, the contours of his face. He has scars around his eyes, Michael noted, his fingers detecting the slightly different texture of fur where Shadow's eyes had been injured years before. Yes, Alex confirmed. He lost his sight due to untreated injuries before he came to the shelter. A hint of recognition flickered across Michael's face, perhaps the beginning of a connection forged through shared experience. What should I do next? Let's try a simple walking exercise, Marcus suggested, moving to transfer Shadow's harness handle to Michael. The harness is designed to provide tactile feedback between you. Shadow will detect obstacles through scent and his whiskers, while you provide directional guidance through the handle. The first attempts were understandably awkward. Michael, accustomed to navigating independently with his cane, had to adjust to the rhythm of moving with a dog. Shadow, trained to work with sighted handlers until now, needed to interpret a different pattern of cues. Shorter steps. Marcus coached. Shadow is calibrated to your pace and stride length. Think of it as a dance where you're learning each other's movements. After several minutes of practice across the training room, something remarkable began to happen. The tentative starts and stops smoothed into more fluid movement. When Shadow detected a deliberately placed obstacle and guided them around it, Michael's expression changed from concentration to surprise. He knew that chair was there, he said, reaching down to confirm with his hand what Shadow had already navigated them past. His whiskers and sense of air pressure detected it, Alex explained. He's actually more sensitive to some obstacles than a sighted dog might be because he's developed his other senses to an extraordinary degree. They continued practicing for nearly an hour, gradually adding complexity to the routes. By the end of the session, the improvement in their coordination was remarkable. Not perfect, but showing clear potential. As they prepared to conclude for the day, Michael knelt beside Shadow, his hands carefully mapping the dog's features as if committing them to memory. You said he was in a shelter for 6 years, he asked quietly. Yes, Alex confirmed. Overlooked because of his blindness. Michael was silent for a moment, his fingers gently stroking Shadow's graying muzzle. People can be pretty stupid sometimes, can't they, boy? He murmured, the first genuine warmth entering his voice. As Michael's brother helped him back to the truck, Alex and Marcus exchanged hopeful glances. For the next part, please stay connected with us and do subscribe our channel. Thank you.